Good evening. I trust that no one had any problems with court's instructions not to discuss the case, not to let anyone discuss the case with them, not to form or express any opinions, or to investigate the case in any way. If I forget to ask you when you come back from breaks and lunch and evenings, if you ever have any problems in that regard, please bring it to my attention. This may be the only time we start on time this week, but we're going to do our best to start when we're supposed to, okay? I gave you the court's instructions yesterday, I believe, and gave you your oath, so also I'll let you know I've double enforced this camera people, reminded them that they're not to show any of y'all on camera at any time. I've also told them not to do any close-ups of any client and attorney communications or any close-ups of any documents that may be on your desk. So they've been instructed on that. If everybody's ready, why don't we have your opening statement for the state, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please report. Good morning. I didn't have a chance to say much yesterday. My name is David Miller, Judge of the Assistant Attorney for the 3rd Circuit, your neighboring district here at Pontotoc. Purpose of the statement is simple and the simple data of our case will present today. You're the trier of fact. That means you're going to hear all of the evidence presented by the state and the evidence presented by the defense. You are the judge of the witness's credibility. You determine if they're credible or not. I expect that you're going to hear evidence from the state in the form of testimonial evidence. You're going to hear from law enforcement officers from Pontotoc County. You're going to hear testimony from Smith County, Virginia sheriff's deputies that work on the state. You're going to see physical evidence. You're going to see phone dumps. You're going to see other documents and other physical evidence in this case. Based on all the evidence, you deliberate, take all that into consideration and apply to the law as the judge will instruct you in the case. First question is, who is Kirby Carpenter? That's why we're here. He died on November 30th of 2022. He was the father of 2 children, Towns and Enola. He was a son to Maddie Jane and Jerry. He was a brother to 2 sisters, Casey and Wendy, and a brother to 3 other brothers. He was a Marine Corps veteran. He was a musician, an outdoorsman, an entrepreneur, a business owner. He owned a company called Mississippi Gold, Silver, and Coin Exchange in Ripley. I think the testimony is going to be that he was a self-made man, and by all accounts, he was financially successful. He was only 36 years old when he died. Kirby was gunned down with a shotgun in his carport at his home on County Road 600 in Tippah County on November 30th of 2022, approximately 7 p.m. He suffered wounds to his neck and chest. The physical evidence will show that his body, after he was shot, was dragged from the carport to the side of the house, at which time a curtain or a tarp was placed over him, secured by a toolbox out of a pickup truck. We will prove that the person responsible for this murder is Jeff Spence, the man sitting right over there. What was his motive? It's an old story: money, greed. Now, Caitlin Spence is the daughter of Jeff and Karen Spence. She moved to Mississippi to attend Mississippi State University, and when that ended, she moved to Boonville to work at Tractor Supply. Kirby owned a liquor store in Boonville that was close in proximity to Tractor Supply, and they met. They started a relationship. They moved in together. In 2021, Caitlin became pregnant with Enola. She was born in July of 2022. I believe the evidence will show that Caitlin's parents, Jeff and Karen, came to Mississippi to help with Enola in July of 2022. The Spences lived in a little town called Saltville, Virginia, which is in southwest Virginia. Now, throughout this case, I want you to pay attention to the timeline. The timeline is critical in this case. The families spent Thanksgiving together in 2022. The evidence will show that the Spences, Jeff and Karen, left on November 29th, early in the afternoon, one day before Kirby's murder. On November 30th, Caitlin got up early to go to work. Kirby was still asleep in bed. Caitlin got up and she drove her daughter Enola to her friend Bailey Reese's house in Boonville for her to keep while Caitlin was at work. And throughout the afternoon, you'll see that Caitlin and Kirby exchanged text messages. Kirby's last text, the last communication from his phone, was at 6:37 p.m. on November 30th. He had been to Kroger in Corinth, and the last text, he was passing Gino's tire store in Boonville. Caitlin asked him, where is he? He's at Gino's. He's headed home. It's probably about a 10 to 15 minute drive from Gino's in Boonville to Kirby's home on County Road 600. So he's going to get home about 7 o'clock. And again, critical to this is there are no more communications coming from Kirby after 6:37. You've got people trying to text him, you've got people trying to call him with no response. So he goes dark after 6:37. The remainder of the night, November 30th, Caitlin is texting him, where are you? Apparently they'd been in some kind of tiff, argument, weren't getting along, and she's, trying to get him, okay, I'm going to bed. This continues the next day, which is on Thursday, which is December 1st, 30 days in November. Where are you? I need you home, et cetera, no response. Again, there's no activity on Kirby's phone. This continues to the 1st and up until 12:30 on the 2nd, which is a Friday. At 12:30, Caitlin discovered Kirby's body underneath the tarp and the toolbox. She was on the phone with Maddie Jane, who is Kirby's mother, and she called 911, and the investigation ensued from that point. When Caitlin arrived home on the night of the 30th, Kirby's truck was in the driveway. It was locked. The groceries he had purchased from Kroger were still in there, but no Kirby. So, according to Karen and Jeff, they came back to Mississippi on Saturday, December 3rd. The funeral was December 17th of 2022, and they went back to Virginia, all three, on December 20th. The investigation by the Tippah County Sheriff's Department showed that the security cameras had been disabled. You'll hear evidence about a satchel of money that Kirby commonly carried around, well known, was missing, and the .22 pistol that he commonly carried in his pocket was also missing. Ironically, 1 year later, November 30th of 2023, the Spences were arrested in Virginia by officers from Smith County. They found keys on Mr. Spence to several lock boxes, storage units, etc. And those lock boxes and storage units were searched pursuant to search warrants. And in those lock boxes, we contend, were items that belonged to Kirby Carpenter. Jeff Spence had the motive. Jeff Spence pulled the trigger. Jeff Spence murdered Kirby Carpenter. His defense is he wasn't there. We will prove otherwise. Thank you.
You wish to make a closing statement this time?
morning. Hope y'all are well this morning. Jeff Spence hasn't killed anybody, and he is chosen in this case. He's selected to be the criminal defendant. And because he's selected to be the criminal defendant, the accused person, the state of Mississippi has gone through all sorts of contortions and changes of pace, different approaches to make the evidence fit Jeff Spence. It's kind of like trying to put a square peg into a round hole. That's what they've been trying to do for a year and a half. Mr. Mueller wants you to pay attention to the timeline. I certainly do. Spences were with their daughter in Tippah County for several months in 22. I'd been visiting there off and on for a year and a half or 2 years, but after the baby was born in July of 22, they spent much more time here helping their daughter first time developing mother and son. They were here until November the 29th, as Mr. Mueller told you, and they left at about 3 p.m. Where they live in Virginia, it's not an afternoon's drive. It's 10 hours. They drove 10 hours home. Wee hours of the morning they arrive, they get some rest, and the next day they're doing things at their property, their home, that had been neglected for weeks. Spent the day there at their home. The government says, well, let me back up. This case is based on government theory, not government evidence. There is no evidence, none, zero, that Jeff Spence was at Kirby Carpenter's house on November the 30th. I don't dispute that that's the day he died. I just dispute who did it. Obviously somebody was there, knew that he would be there. Jeff Spence didn't know that. One of the things you're going to learn about Kirby Carpenter, you're going to learn a lot more than Mr. Mueller told you. He wasn't just a businessman and ex-Marine. He was a drug dealer, and he was a stolen gun runner. We get that from some witnesses right here. And when he was killed on November 30th, Jeff Spence was with his family, his wife, in Virginia, 10 hours away. The government's first theory, trying to put him in this square hole, said that, well, he never left. He and his wife didn't leave Mississippi. They went to Alabama, got a motel room, and came back. They couldn't develop any evidence for that, so what'd they do? They trashed it. And the next theory, not fact, next theory was that Mrs. Spence, who was severely ill, drove herself back to Virginia on November 29th for 10 hours. And that Jeff Spence stayed behind. Where? They don't have any evidence of where. They don't have any evidence at all. That's theory. And the theory is that he hid out and killed Kirby Carpenter. Now, they couldn't make that fly because if that were the case, Jeff Spence is standing up here in Tippah County, Mississippi, afoot, with no way to get back to Virginia. Well, that wasn't going to fly either. So they trashed it. Third theory is that he drove from Mississippi 10 hours to Virginia, wee hours of the morning, gets some rest, turns right around and comes back to Mississippi for 10 hours. An almost 70-year-old man driving 20 hours in 24 hours. hid out and killed Kirby Carpenter. And then 10 hours back to Virginia. It's not plausible. It doesn't fly. As they used to say in West Point, Mississippi, that dog doesn't fly. That is not based on any fact, none. It's based on their theory trying to make a round peg go into a square hole. And it just doesn't fly. One of the things you need to know about Kirby Carpenter, and you'll get it from people on the witness stand. Kirby lived a very self-centered, independent life. Kirby lived life on his terms. He wasn't telling you where he was going tomorrow. He didn't want you to know his schedule. He didn't have a schedule a lot of times. And he was known. Kirby might leave tomorrow, come back Saturday. You never knew. He was that independent. He didn't want anybody telling him what to do. Just think about how foolish it is for the government to take a position on their theory that Jeff Spence would drive 10 hours to Virginia, 10 hours back to Mississippi. How in the hell is he going to see Kirby Carpenter? You don't know what Kirby Carpenter's schedule was. He's coming all that way just on the chance that he might encounter him? Does that make sense? I say no. No. And the government has Kirby's cell phone. The government has Jeff's cell phone, or had it. They do what's called an analysis of the phone. In my profession, we call it a dump. They're just downloading the information. And a lot of times it's thousands and thousands of calls, text messages, whatever. If you take that cell phone of Kirby Carpenter's and you analyze it, you'll see that there was no contact from Jeff Spence to Kirby Carpenter. You gonna be around? I'll see you there about 6:30. Okay. No back and forth. None. No communication. No evidence. Look at Jeff Spence's phone. You find the same thing. There's no communication. And they want you to believe, and we're going to nail this down with their witnesses, they want you to believe that he went to Virginia for 10 hours, drove back 10 hours, killed somebody, drove back to Virginia in 10 hours, all on the chance that he might encounter Kirby Carpenter. It just doesn't fly. Okay? This case went on for a year. The government didn't know who to charge. And they ended up charging the arrest warrant for Jeff Spence was November the 30th, actually 1 year after Kirby's death. And that warrant was, they hadn't developed any evidence of of Jeff's being president of Mississippi, back and forth, nothing. A couple of things I want you to listen to. The warrant that was issued for Jeff's arrest was based on information that a career criminal named David Barnes conjured up to get himself some sort of break from the government, because David Barnes is a career criminal. He's facing life in prison. He's in jail in Tippah County right now with some special breaks because he's now their trustee. But David Barnes knows how the system is played. He's facing life imprisonment as a career criminal. Habitual is what we call it in Mississippi. And he gave a statement on November the 3rd, 2022, after he was arrested yet again for a series of burglaries, break-ins, and thefts. David has a fondness for stealing your stuff, selling it at a pawn shop. As a matter of fact, pawn shop is his nickname, because that's what he does. He steals your stuff and sells it at pawn shops. And he'd already been to prison for doing that years ago. And he got arrested in 2022. Well, let me back up. He worked also, David worked for Kirby Carpenter. When Kirby was found, one of the first people that law enforcement talked to was David Barnes. David Barnes didn't give any statements about anybody. He just denied knowledge of everything. And then in 2023, David Barnes gets talked to again by Chris Mallister, typical law enforcement. Doesn't say anything about Jeff Spence or anything. He gets talked to again in 2023 about Kirby's case. Again, doesn't say anything incriminating to anybody. Now, November the 3rd of 2023, David gets arrested for 4 more break-ins. 4 more break-ins. And that's when David is sadly enough with the criminal justice system in Tippah County to know that, holy cow, I'm in a whole bunch of trouble. So David makes up a story about something that he heard at Kirby's funeral that Caitlin, that's Kirby's girlfriend, something that Caitlin said at the funeral incriminating herself and her father. It took him a year to come up with that. He came up with it because David is sadly covering his tail end, so to speak, getting some sort of benefit, some sort of relief. I'll tell you a story about it in just a minute. And that's the evidence that they were flying on. When I got involved in this case, that was their evidence. It's what David Barnes said. David Barnes is not credible. He's simply not credible. And later, recently this year, Caitlin, who felt like she needed to get herself out of trouble, get herself back with her baby, gave a statement to law enforcement. And part of that statement was David Barnes is a liar. What David Barnes said, I said at the funeral home, is a lie. He's simply making it up. And that's in keeping with David Barnes's personality, his temperament. When he gets himself in trouble, he tries to do something to alleviate the trouble. And I'll tell you this, David Barnes one time stole a church's money. He stole the money from the church at Faulkner up in Tippah County. And to cover his tracks, to help himself out, you know what he did? He tried to burn the church down and burn all the evidence. He went to prison for that. The notion that you're going to hear what Caitlin has to say, I'm telling you, it's all contrived to get herself out of the focus. She's the one who lived with her, not Jeff Spence, not Karen Spence. Caitlin was the one in the house. She was the one that was there. And she was in this house November 29th, 30th, December 1st, December 2nd, and for some reason it took her 4 days to go find, 3 days to go find Kirby's body. That's something you'll have to determine whether or not she's credible. But you will hear in this case evidence of text messages between Karen, the mother, Caitlin, the daughter, on November the 30th, clearly putting Jeff Spence at home in Virginia. Not in Mississippi. When he's in Virginia, he's cooking a meal for the family. He's not on his way to Mississippi. They want you to think he. 10 hours up, 10 hours back. No. November 30th, Jeff Spence was at his home, taking care of his business, taking care of his relationship with his wife, minding their own business. And as we go through this case, bear in mind, there's no evidence, no hard, direct evidence putting Jeff Spence where they want him to be, where they're trying to make you think he wants. No. No fault. They say that when they searched the safe deposit box in Virginia, they found Jeff Spence's collection of stuff. I mean, what Kirby was doing in terms of what I told you yesterday I called collectible. Jeff's been doing it since Kirby was not even out of diapers. That's how long Jeff's been collecting coins, medals, and that's it. Kirby was a baby. And they do find in this safety deposit box some things that Jeff had gotten from Kirby. He bought from Kirby. They did business together. Not all the time. Jeff did business with a lot of people. But he did business with Kirby, and I can't tell you exactly where everything was in that box that he had bought from Kirby. But he did. He had a relationship, a business relationship with Kirby, not just a family relationship. One of the things I want you to focus on is when Kirby's body was found on December 2nd, found by Kate on December 2nd. Law enforcement then floods the place. Okay. Chris Mallister, who was the case agent, I think, in this case, is a deputy sheriff investigator in Pontotoc County. I think he's going to be the first witness. Kirby had a room in his house that everybody called the safe room. When I say the safe room, I don't mean a place you hid in tornadoes. A room full of safes. I don't know, a wall covered in safes. Had stuff in it. Now, if Jeff was the killer on November the 30th in the evening when he was at home in Virginia, and if what was in his safe deposit box came from Kirby, you would think that there would be some damage to those safes. Some prying them open, breaking the locks. There's no evidence of that. Whoever killed Kirby wanted to kill Kirby. Wanted to kill Kirby. And Kirby, I told you, meth dealer, pill dealer, gun dealer. Kirby lived a high-risk and dangerous lifestyle. And he was in a dispute almost completely daily with somebody about usually money. He sold a liquor store to the guy, and I've subpoenaed that guy, but I can't find him. And that guy had made a verbal threat to Kirby shortly before Kirby's death. Kirby was threatened the year before by another County resident with whom he had a business dispute over $2,500. The guy threatened to shoot him in the face, crying out loud, or haul him out in the street in Ripley and beat him to death in the street. Kirby had just recently, before he was killed, sold some lab diamonds, fake diamonds, to to a Chattanooga diamond dealer and ripped him off, passed off the diamonds as real, and they weren't. He was dealing with meth dealers, even at his house at Lake Mohawk, at various parking lots. And he had a gang in Memphis that he dealt with recently, regularly. So, pay attention to all these details. Just bear in mind that the government's burden is to prove to you that I think Jeff did business with Kirby. I admit that, he did. Business with a lot of people. Make the government prove to you that Jeff Spence was at County Road 600, Temple County, Mississippi, on November the 30th, at whatever time they say, 7 or 8 p.m. I can prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt and to your individual satisfaction. And I'll be revisiting all of these facts with you as we go through the witness. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody put on the jury. Who would the state call as his first witness?
Chris Mallister.
All right. Somebody find Mr. McAllister. If anybody wants to come in now, they can anyway.